So, my name is George Alicio. I'm the Dean of the Weinberg Memorial Library, and I'm honored to welcome you all to the 7th presentation of the Jay Nathan Ph.D. Visiting Scholar Series. I'm pleased to see so many of you here tonight. It's obviously been a long time since we've had an event like this, and it's a joy to see so many people together once again and to celebrate such an important topic. And I can assure you we have a wonderful evening in store for you all. So by inviting guest scholars of international repute, the Jay Nathan Ph.D. Visiting Scholar Series helps us to enrich the intellectual life of the university and the local community through cultural exchange and exposition. The visiting series has been made possible by our generous benefactor, Dr. Jay Nathan. Dr. Nathan is a lifelong resident of Lackawanna County, having taught as a tenured professor in the Kenya School of Management. He specializes in country strategies and global cultures. Tonight's events feature Iceland, history, culture, and environment. And we are honored to have Ambassador of Iceland to the United States, Bergdís Ellertsdóttir, and classical violinist Eva Ingolfsdóttir with us tonight. Before we begin, I request that we please refrain from taking flash photography during the performance. Also, because there is much to share with you all tonight, if you can hold on to your questions to the designated question and answer period, greatly appreciated. So at this time, I'd like to invite our guests to the panel. So Dr. Nathan, Ambassador Ellertsdóttir, please join us.
Yeah, hit the map that I can. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at the University of Scranton, especially to see many of you. And as I said, I'm a longtime resident of Lackawanna County. In 2019, summers, particularly July, I had the good fortune to be part of a group of Fulbright scholars that included native Icelanders, ambassadors, professors from various universities in the States, and presidents, and not only from the U.S., they're from Sweden, as well as from Norway. So it's a good group to be part of. I'm really lucky with that group. And what the group planned, that Insight tour that began here, and you can see the map. And of course, we arrived in the airport, international airport, the couple of weeks, and very close. Well, we saw the Blue Lagoon, which is again a hot spring. And it's a nice dip into that. And we had several other important places. And to make it short, that we began with the West Iceland after our arrival. And we had seen during the trip the settlement center, where there's also a museum that portrayed the literary works of famous Icelandic early settlers, and they also had about the journeys that many of the settlers made from Norway, from north. These are kings and descendants of both North Norway and from the south, southern part of Norway as well. And they settled first on the eastern part of the Iceland. And to make it short, I would like the sagas, which I would suggest that I read a few of them, and I watched some of those. So what I learned from the sagas, the history of Iceland, and the early settlement, and from 800 to 1100. And these sagas were written in 13th and early 14th centuries. And then in the middle of July, after a few days, we also visited the central northern part of Iceland. I would like to be briefly mention that we were there in Akureyri, which is the second largest city, and then we moved to Húsavík, which is closer to Arctic Circle. So, and then I had the opportunity again. We went to another location, which is about, I would think, at least 20 miles from the Húsavík, much closer. I experienced the midnight sun, the whole experience that transformed me, not only at that part of being there, but seeing the glaciers, seeing the landscape, and also I saw the Gartfoss, the waterfalls, and I recommend to anyone, and being a professor teaching international business and country studies, it is eye-opening for me, and I also talked about in classes and hope to write articles about Iceland. Now, we are honored, and I'm personally privileged to introduce Her Excellency Bergdís Ellertsdóttir and her distinguished career as a diplomat with more than 3 decades. And her achievements and diplomatic career, she has had positions early on as a secretary of the Trade and Department and Foreign Affairs Office of Iceland. Then she became deputy head of mission, and then deputy director of the political department dealing with security issues in NATO, OSCE, and bilateral relations with the United States, Canada, and Russia. And then immediately she became Deputy Director General in Foreign Affairs Ministry, and every time she is given important responsibilities, which speaks volume about her ability as a diplomat. And she was the chief negotiator in the Iceland-China Free Trade Agreement. And also, she later on became Icelandic mission, that is head of the Icelandic mission to the European Union, became the ambassador of Iceland to Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and San Marino. And Her Excellency also became permanent representative to the United Nations. So she became Iceland ambassador to the United States in August 2019. It is more than a pleasure, and welcome, Her Excellency, and please join me in again welcoming her Ambassador Iceland to the United States. And thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nathan, for this very kind and generous introduction. As you can see from the picture, it was taken before COVID. So my dark hair is gray. You don't see the picture now, but it was up here. I'm watching it. I just wanted to start with a very short video and then go on to tell you a little bit about Iceland. First of all, I want to tell you this is my first time in Scranton, and it's been a beautiful and very nice day. And I very much enjoyed meeting all the people I met here today. It's been a privilege, and I'm certain I will come again. At least I need to bring my son again, who is a big fan of The Office. And someone was so generous here to run out and buy me some memorabilia for him. He has his birthday tomorrow, so I would be really the best mom, even if I did not do anything. So I just click the space, and then it's just very short, just to give you a short insight into Iceland.
Enough waking up to more bad news. Enough not making new friends or making it to the gym. Enough talking to the walls. Enough with the endless video calls. When was the last time you felt goosebumps? Or had a real date with a person? In person. Enough missing out. It looks like you've had enough. It looks like you need Iceland.
So this was just a kind of we call it a taste of Iceland. And then I'm just going to.
Hi,
We're not going to show you any more videos unless you force us to. Okay, this was. Oh, thank you so much. And then just the side. Okay, thank you so much. I'm very thrilled to see so many of you here tonight. I just wanted to, I assume that you do not know a lot about us. Some of you might know more than I will be telling you, but hopefully some of you will learn something about the country. Just out of curiosity, have any of you been in Iceland? Oh, wow. Maybe you should come up here. So, and any of you planning on going? Okay. Exactly. I hope so, that you will have the time to visit one day. But I just wanted to give you an insight into some of the, as it said, kind of the history, the nature, and what Iceland is about. And I hope that we will have time for questions afterwards, because that's always the most important thing, because I might not think of what the issues are that you are curious about. So where is Iceland? Most of you probably know, but as you can see, it's this small green dot there. Up in the north, an island in the North Atlantic Ocean. We always used to feel very isolated. I said, okay, do you hear me? Okay. But this has changed in the globalized world. So just a few kind of elements of nature in Iceland, which is the flora and the fauna and the geology. I mean, Iceland is an island situated on the tectonic plates, the Eurasian and the American, and the country is practically growing, if you could say that, because the tectonic plates, and now I'm getting into deep water. I'm trying to go deep into geology. But anyways, you can see these movements of the plates with your own eyes in Iceland. And I've just put one picture up there, the bridge going, and these are the two plates, the American and the Eurasian. And this, of course, these elements, this movement of the planet makes this island very volcanic, and the volcanic activity is very prominent. This is also the reason we have geothermal energy, and then we have glaciers and waterfalls. The animal kingdom was not very diverse when the first settlers came. The only land mammal was the Arctic fox, but the settlers brought animals with them. The vegetation is very northern. It's grassland, moss. There's a lot of lava, sands, highlands where there is no way to live. And if you look at the map of Iceland, all the villages are around the coast, not in the middle of the country. So this is very typical Icelandic fjord landscape, and the towns are always at the fjords, at the water. Fishermen and of course then farmers. This is the typical vegetation in a lava landscape, but this vegetation is only reached 150 years after the eruption of the lava. But it is a very typical vegetation. And this is also very typical south of the island where we have the big glaciers, these black sands, and then the glaciers, the waterfalls, and then volcanic eruption. And this eruption took place just a year ago, and it just stopped very recently. And we call this eruption, because eruptions can be very dangerous, and people had to move, their farms were destroyed, there was famine that followed big eruptions. But this one we call a tourist eruption. It was just half an hour drives out of Reykjavik, close to the international airport, but very kind of concise. And it actually brought a lot of people to come and see it. Sadly, it stopped just a few months back, but it lasted a year. I was very envious of my friends who were always sending me pictures taken out of their kitchen windows, this red lava in the black sky in the winter. But this is a fact of life. The history, Dr. Nathan, you also went so well over it. There's not much more for me to say. I mean, the first settlers, they came mostly from Norway, from Scandinavia. Some of them brought some Irish women with them, and that's why genetically speaking, Icelanders are like 60% Norwegian and 40% Irish. So we have a democracy dating back to the 930. The Alþingi, the Parliament of Iceland was established, was very different from any parliaments that we know today. Christianity was introduced in the year 1000, and as Dr. Nathan said, then the sagas were written in the 13th, 14th century. And in Iceland we have nature and we have the sagas. The sagas are our history. That is what we base our identity on. And because we don't have big cathedrals, we don't have historical monuments of any kind. So our kind of core identity and history is the sagas. And it also explains the very kind of interest in literature and the big role that literature plays in Icelandic society. So we, because of many reasons, but one of them being that the chieftains that ruled the country were at war, and the only way to solve it was to be part of the Norwegian kingdom. It happened in the 13th century, and then we were under Danish rule and became independent in 1944. Of course, all of this history is much more complex than that, but these are kind of the highlights. In 1874, we received a constitution from the Danish king, and in 1904, a home rule was established. In 1915, women over the age of 40 gained national suffrage and had the right to hold. We were sovereign in the year 1918, so we were separate from the government of Denmark, but the king was still the king of Iceland. So, and we did not rule our foreign policy. with the war, the onset of war in Europe, we call it, I'm not sure the British, but we were occupied by the British forces. They came at least unannounced on the 10th of May, 1940. And then you see it's British occupation, US military. That's what happens 1 year after that. So, so we had the US military taking over the role of the British. Their military was needed elsewhere. And it's very interesting. At that time, the inhabitants of Iceland were about 120,000, and the military, the US military counted 60,000. So you can imagine the influence of everything in our life and culture that this brought. But this was, of course, the highlight of the war. Then afterwards, we're not so. As I said, we became a republic. We were independent from Denmark in 1944. And this was, of course, at the time when Denmark was occupied by Germany. We had an agreement with Denmark that our relationship with them would be reviewed, and that was approximately at that time. And we took the opportunity and declared independence from Denmark. And the United States was actually the first country to recognize that. We were among the members that established NATO, and in 1951, we negotiated a US defense treaty that is a bilateral agreement between Iceland and the United States, which celebrated 80 years. We have not had many wars in Iceland, but we did have a war with the British called the Cod Wars, which had to do with the extension of our fisheries zone. The British were not too happy about, and sent the British Navy was sent to Iceland to protect the British trawlers. But we were successful, and in 1976, the Brits accepted that we had an exclusive fishing zone of 200 nautical miles. Other milestones in our histories, I mentioned earlier, talking to some very interesting people here at the university, that in 1975, women in Iceland went on strike. They walked out. The picture from that, and they said, our work, our contribution, be it in the workforce or the society, is not appreciated. So let's all walk out, just leave kids behind, the work, everything we're doing, and just they went out into the street and sang, and it was a very good day. I was just telling someone here earlier that it was the day that all sausages to make hot dogs were sold out, because that was the only thing the fathers could cook. But this really paved the way for what came afterwards. And what we are very proud of in Iceland is how far we have come when it comes to gender equality. It paved the way for Bergdís Ellertsdóttir to be elected president in 1980. And it paved the way for what we enjoy now in Iceland. All the milestones, many of you have heard about the Reagan-Gorbachev meeting. I mean, sadly, the situation now is quite different, but at that time, this was a very good result when Reagan and Gorbachev met in Iceland. And the picture is actually of Bergdís Ellertsdóttir, the president, and Reagan. We negotiated a very extensive trade agreement called the European Economic Area Agreement with the European Union. And then I was talking about the military. There was a U.S. military base in Iceland from the war, or from the 50s and until 2006, when it was closed, as we all thought and hoped and dreamed that the world was different and the Cold War was over, and this strategic importance of Iceland in the middle of the Atlantic, as it had been in the war, in World War II, was not there anymore. But we already have much more activity now in the north, and there has been a lot of development into more infrastructure and more built up in the last. Even if there is no permanent presence of U.S. military in Iceland. Many of you heard about the economic crash in Iceland in 2008. We managed to recover from that. I mean, that in itself is a saga which could take all night to tell you, but at least Iceland hit the world news I think for the first time, that we were on the front page all over the world, even if the news was negative. Just after that, in 2010, there was this famous eruption in Eyjafjallajökull, you might have heard of, which stopped all air traffic in Europe for days. So we had two bad news hitting the media, the economic crash, and this eruption that disrupted air flights in Europe and elsewhere. But the outcome was good for us, because the most important aspect of the build-up or the recovery of the economy after the crash was tourism. Of course, it was cheap for example, US citizens to travel to Iceland after the crash because of the currency crisis we had. But these events put Iceland on the map, and it really made people want to come, even if so what is the saying, that bad news is better than none, or no news is good news, or whatever. What is it? There's something that is better to be badly spoken of than not at all, or something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, so that seemed to be the case here, and it really helped us recover from this crisis. And tourism has become the most important industry in Iceland. The picture here on the lower one is from just after the crash. It is, people were, of course, very angry at the politicians, at the bankers who had allowed all of this to happen. And so it was called the pots and pans revolution. So there was a lot of anger in society for a long time. People wanted a new constitution, and there was a very unstable political situation with governments falling one after the other. So I think in 3 years we had 4 elections, but this has all stabilized. So Iceland is not a member of the European Union, but it's a member of a small club now called the EFTA, the European Free Trade Association, along with Norway, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. It used to be a bigger club, but all the other members then joined the European Union. The United States is our biggest trading partner, but we have many free trade agreements around the world. Some we negotiated with our partners in EFTA, but others are bilateral ones, like the one with China. In our world and in Iceland, the Nordic cooperation is of essence. We have a very close Nordic cooperation, and it's not just taking place in the Nordic countries, but also elsewhere. Like in Washington, D.C., where I work, my colleagues from the other Nordic embassies are my kind of go-to persons when I need any assistance or help. We We do things collectively. We host meetings together. We are, so it's very important wherever we go, this Nordic cooperation. And I think sometimes we ourselves do not appreciate or realize how beneficial it is. And being the most important sector in Iceland these days, it used to be fisheries. We were very dependent on fisheries. It is still a very important industry in Iceland. Aluminium is also important. Aluminium is produced in Iceland because of the electricity that is sustainably produced and not as expensive as many other countries. We are blessed in Iceland because we have an abundance of geothermal energy, and we also have hydropower, and that means that all our houses, all heating and all electricity comes from these sources. So we use fossil fuels for the transport, but electric cars are becoming more and more popular, and I think we're number 2 in the world when it comes to electric cars. Our Norwegian friends top that list. There is a lot of development in high-tech industry, all sorts of innovation, also in the energy sector. There is a lot of development and work going into a special carbon capture and storage program. So the government, the most important issue, topping the kind of list of what the government is planning to do is, of course, how to fight the climate crisis, climate change, and all of this energy, all of these energy issues are a part of the solution. So, shortly on culture, I mentioned literature, how important that is in our culture. Of course, we have music and film and all of that. But I just wanted to just go on to literature. I mean, we mentioned the sagas. We have one Nobel Prize winner, which is Laxness. The Nordic noir is very popular all over the world, and we have our own Nordic noir authors who have become very popular in the United States. The most difficult problem for Icelandic authors is translation. Not a lot of people read Iceland, so and it is difficult. I was at a reading the other day with 2 Icelandic authors, and I hadn't realized that it's just not just to have someone interested in publishing your book and even investing in the translation, but to find the translators who read Icelandic well enough to be able to translate into English or any other languages. And these people are so few and far apart that there is a long list of authors waiting to be translated. So as one of the authors that I was listening to the other day said, I mean, it is a very isolated profession to be an Icelandic author, writing for 300,000 people, and then, finding difficult to get out into the world. But literature is kind of our heart, so to speak. Everyone reads. I wanted to mention what is called the Christmas book flood. I see someone nodding here, which is that at Christmas, the most popular gift in Iceland is a book. And most books which are published in the period leading up to Christmas. So around Christmas, everyone is just talking about books. And have you read that? And did you see that she has a new book this year? And, it's like, that's all we talk about, leading up to Christmas. So everyone in Iceland, not everyone, but a lot of people walk around with a book in their stomach. So I'm one of them. hopefully when I retire, I will have time to write. But this is, I think, kind of the heart in our culture. But we also have music, and many of you know a lot of Icelandic musicians. I mean, Björk is, of course, someone who people might know. Groups like Of Monsters and Men and Kaleo, Hildur Guðnadóttir. We were very proud when she received an Oscar for the music she composed for Joker. We have a very prominent pianist who is playing now in the United States a lot, and composer Anna Þorvaldsdóttir. These are just a few names, just to give you a taste of what it is. But music has grown as a business in Iceland a lot. Film is also something that is growing, and also Iceland being used as the backdrop for movies. So there's a lot of television and movies that are being made in Iceland because, of course, the nature but also we have tax incentives for those who are making movies in Iceland. I saw somewhere huge amount that The Bachelor got reimbursed after being made in Iceland. I'm not sure that's a good thing, but anyway. So that is a growing business, not just in Iceland, but also just films and television being made in Iceland, which is good for the people there who are working on these in the film business, because many people, I mean, they don't bring all their crew. I mean, a lot of them are locally hired, so there's a lot of know-how now in that business. And visual art, of course, is very important as well. I mean, I'm not sure that you would know any of these names, but these are kind of the most prominent artists. Of course, Iceland was not really famous for good food for a long time. We ate cooked haddock 5 days a week and overcooked lamb on Sundays. So it was not really, what you thought about Iceland, you thought about gastronomy or good food. But we have really come a long way since then. Seafood, of course, is our top right. We like to call our Icelandic lamb wild meat, lamb, because they actually never, they just roam the wilderness before they are caught in the hole and brought to our tables. Then, of course, we have greenhouses, which makes it possible to grow tomatoes and other vegetables which would otherwise not be able to grow. I mean, when I was growing up, of course, we had sometimes tomatoes and cucumbers that were grown in these greenhouses. Thank you. But mostly it's just potatoes and potatoes. So this has really changed, and of course we import a lot. I mean, we import most of our agriculture products, apart from meat and some of the vegetables. I don't know why, but chocolate and licorice has been put on this list here. Licorice, we are licorice. I don't know if you like licorice, but there is licorice in every candy in Iceland. So if you go, you need to get some licorice candy, and then of course. There is a lot going on, like here in the US as well, about the small producers of beer and all sorts of liquor. So there's a lot going on there. And then if you go to Iceland, you have to go to a swimming pool. Swimming pools are, like literature, part of our culture. A lot of people start their day by going to the swimming pool. They might not swim a lot, but they will sit in the hot water and they will discuss politics. Who happen to be sitting there. In a lot of pools in Reykjavik, you always have the same people at the same time in the morning. So my sister, she goes every morning at 7:00 and she meets the same people. And you have to take care which shower you use or where you sit in the hot tub, because people have their space. So it's a really important part of our culture, and I think I read somewhere that our happiness, even if the Finns are, but we are among the happiest, and that one of the aspects is this soaking in hot water. So these are just a few kind of fun facts about Iceland. I mean, we are about 350,000. About 50,000 of these are immigrants. The biggest group of immigrants are from Poland. I think today they are about 30,000 Poles in Iceland. The best time to visit is all year round. It depends on what you want to see. If you want to, as you were saying, Dr. Nathan, you want to have sun, if there is, 24 hours a day, then June is the best time. If you want to see the northern lights, and maybe October, November, January would be a better. Yes, we are very proud of how high we score on gender equality, that we have the oldest parliament in the world. We are not so proud of the fact that beer was banned in Iceland from 1915 to 1989. And you might wonder why beer? The thing is that the prohibition, which was, in very many countries, including this one, which started in 1915, was then gradually lifted. And one of the main reasons for it being lifted at the time was that we needed to sell salted cod, bacalao, to Spain. And they said, okay, we won't buy any bacalao unless you buy some wine. So they had to lift some of the ban. And then gradually it was lifted, and the beer got stuck there. And that, because people thought if we have real beer in Iceland, that will mean that people would drink more. So until 1989, the only beer you had was a light beer that you had to mix with some vodka. So I mentioned that Reykjavik, how important literature is to us, and Reykjavik is a UNESCO city of literature. So when you walk around Reykjavik, there's a lot of kind of literature experiences and events. And we didn't notice, like you don't do when you live in a country, you don't notice things that are strange, but all the statues all around Reykjavik are mostly of writers and poets. So it just underlines what I've been saying so far. We have this name tradition with, like my name is Ellertsdóttir, which means that I am the daughter of Ellert. Ellert is my father, and I'm just the daughter of him. So we don't have family names. But then again, we have some family names. Like my husband has a family name, but the real tradition is that you are just called daughter or son after your father. And now recently, people are also using the first name of their mother. So I would then be Jóhannudóttir because my mother is named Jóhanna. And this is especially true for those who, are raised by their mother, single, But it is catching on. So some people even have both their parents in the name. So many of you have been to Iceland, so it's close. It's just a few hours away, direct flights from many places. And then I think this is just not so important. But I think I would really, because the most important part for me is always to hear what people want to hear about Iceland if we have time. What time is it?
Yes, we have roughly 15 minutes.
Okay, great. I see someone there. I hope you are not going to ask too difficult questions.
I'm a criminologist who has specialized in crimes of the powerful, not the powerless. And in 2013, I gave an invited lecture at the University of Iceland. And at that time, I was privileged to meet with Ólafur Hauksson. I'm not sure I have the pronunciation right, who is the prosecutor of the banks. Yeah. It is a fascinating fact that Hauksson was the police chief in a small Icelandic village, but was the only person who applied for this job to prosecute the banks. And he successfully prosecuted put some of the top bankers in prison. This country did not do that. Not a single top banker was prosecuted. We have an issue of whether the top insurrectionists will be prosecuted also at this time, but that's a separate issue. In any case, I'm curious as to how that all played out. I heard from a former banking regulator, Bill Black of the University of Missouri, who also gave a lecture in Iceland, that the bankers went after Hauksson. And I'm curious, and in fact, Iceland, I think, was the only Western country that in a serious way pursued these bankers. So I'm curious as to what you can share about how this all ultimately played out. And you say that Iceland has recovered well. And of course, Iceland, as you alluded to, suffered in particular from the financial crash. But how this all played out and how it's looked at today.
Yes, thank you. It's a very interesting question because, first of all, what we did was we did not save the banks. The banks they failed. They were not rescued. Like in most countries, the governments tried to rescue the banks, but they were, of course, that was to a high cost to a lot of investors in other countries as well. So we were not, I was in Brussels at the time, and I can tell you we were not the most popular persons in town. This was really serious, not just for Iceland, but for a lot of investors who had fallen for false information in a way of how, the products these banks were producing for the investors. So there was a lot of anger in Iceland, and because of this anger, there was no way that these criminals, as they were looked at upon, could just walk away. This was something that would have resulted in much more anger and much more kind of political instability, I think, if it had not been pursued. You said that some of them are still in court. And who wants to spend 20 years of their lives in court? We sometimes say in Iceland, okay, some of them did not get what we thought they deserved, but at least they have spent a lot of time in courts trying to, get away from things. But most of them, the key bankers were all sat in jail for some time. It was not a long time, and it was probably not very harsh treatment. But anyway, they were prosecuted, and some of them more often than once. And I think it was needed in a small society where you know where this banker lives. You see he's still there in his big house with his cars, and so you have to. There was so much need that someone would pay for all of this. I don't know who has the microphone. I'm really scared, because you were nodding all the time, so you probably know more than I do.
Oh, no, Excellency, I don't. I will be in Iceland in about 2 weeks.
Oh, great.
I have read all of the sagas. I'm very excited to go. I'm also an artist. Okay. Can you talk about art in Iceland a little more? It's amazing. The art is so independent and unique and beautiful. Please.
Well, thank you, and I hope you will have a great trip to Iceland. And but I think we were discussing this earlier. There is this there is this respect for artists, which makes it easy for someone to say, I want to be an artist. And then we also, even if that does not apply to all, and it can sometimes take some time, but we have a system so that artists will receive salaries from the state. So you can apply. So there's every year you apply. And if you are, for example, if you have shown that you are a serious writer, you have published a book or two, then you will be rewarded for that. So you can, and the kind of behind it lies the wish that this person can do what they do best, write, because most writers have other jobs. But if you want, this writer to bloom, they need to have money and space to do it. So that, I think, also is very encouraging.
Hi, thank you for your lecture. It's been wonderful. If you were a tourist from northeastern Pennsylvania traveling to Iceland for the once-in-a-lifetime trip, tell me what it would be.
Oh God, I think you can just take the car and just drive any direction that you feel like it, where you see there is sun. I mean, we in Iceland, when we ourselves are traveling, we just check the weather forecast and then we go where the sun is. And I'm sure that you will find there, the beauty you're looking for.
From where your country is located, are you getting any of the side effects from this global warming?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we are. I mean, we are the island of fire and ice, but in 100 years, we might be the island of fire and no ice, because the glaciers are melting. And just a few years ago, the scientists were predicting, that they might all have vanished in 200 years. Now it's closer to 100 years. So that will totally change the landscape in Iceland. It will also, it will have a devastating effect. It will make, also the sea rise. And the strange thing is that where the glaciers are at the south of the country, they are pushing the land down. So when the glaciers melt and gets smaller and smaller, the land rises, which is a big problem. If you have a harbor or something, it can be very difficult for the people living there. So we are also, glaciers, yes, they are beautiful, and the effect of their melting can have effects on the kind of the whole water landscape in Iceland, overrunning rivers and all of that, which can destroy land and what have you. But the other issue, which is very serious for us, is the acidification of the oceans, because they are taking in so much CO2. And if that happens, our livelihood, even if we do have a lot of tourists now, but the backbone in our livelihood is fisheries. And then also the fishery stocks are moving north. If the cod moves away from Iceland, that will have devastating economic effects.
Living with regard to art, nature, homogeneous society. So I was wondering, is it difficult for foreigners to settle legally and work in Iceland, or how do you say the immigration?
No, we are a part of the internal market of the European Union. So anyone who lives like in Poland or in Lithuania, where a lot of these people come from. So there are no hindrances. You can come and you have time to find work, and if you find work, you can. Yeah, then for example, like there's a lot of U.S. citizens who have chosen to live in Iceland, and then it's just a process. What you just have to show that you can provide for yourself. Of course, like it's paperwork. It's not like you can just move over and, but it's not. Oh, I would not say that it's overly difficult, and that people are more or less welcome. And we have, especially with the tourism, we have needed people who work in the tourism sector. And I was saying earlier, we sometimes, now in Iceland, if I go to a restaurant or a hotel, or I have to speak English because the people are all from other countries and don't speak Icelandic. And so, yeah, exactly.
Available after the cultural program, and please join Her Excellency for a reception after 7, so you can have close personal conversation or professional conversation. Please free to stay for the reception. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the exciting cultural program, and Eva Ingolfsdóttir comes from a leading musical family in Reykjavik, Iceland. And Eva has studied violin at a very young age, and she has been recognized for her outstanding musical talent, especially beautiful tone and artistic interpretation. To make it short, several of her accomplishments, she has held well-known concert halls, recitals, that is, and including Iceland, of course, Japan, United States, Russia, and Europe. Some of the most known concert halls include Carnegie Hall, Trinity Church in New York City, and Corcoran Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Now, Eva is an enthusiastic advocate of contemporary music, and she has premiered over 100 contemporary pieces and for solo violin, and received many awards. And I don't want to go over her awards, which are too many. And she currently resides in New York City and very passionate about classical music. And let's give her a warm welcome to Eva Ingolfsdóttir, please.
Am I in the right place? Just going to get my violin ready, and I'll do a little introduction, but I have slides with the whole program so you know what's going on. So, this a little bit. This program is curated as an introduction to Iceland. I'm going to start with some of the oldest music that we have found, thanks to this wonderful person. And I'm going to play 4 hymns at the beginning. Then I'm going to play 3 pieces that were written for me, inspired by Iceland, by American composers, and they are really wonderful pieces. And at the end, there will be 2 videos that I prepared with music that I wrote, also inspired by this beautiful country. Thank you. So, the first hymn is quite unusual. It was written in the 12th century by a very important chieftain in Iceland, and things were pretty violent at this time, and he was hit by a rock. And while he was dying, he composed this beautiful hymn. And 700 years later, one of our composers wrote the melody. And this is actually very, very popular today, especially with singing groups and choirs. so we're going to the next. So we are going to play Dance of the Elves by Mark Bonk. This is a real elf dwelling from Iceland. I added a door because on a full moon they'll come out and dance in the moonlight. this is the last movement of the Raven Thoughts, and there are little glimpses of a very popular folk song about the raven, an Icelandic folk song. Thank you very much. This was Raven Thoughts by Mark Haggerty. And following this, we will have a couple of videos with music that I wrote and created most of the videos. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much for that fascinating tour of Iceland and for the beautiful violin performance. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the university's staff that made this possible. So thank you to Kim Fetzko, Granny Mancuso, Jean Lenville, Gary McCullough, and Jason Oakey. If we can have one more round of applause for our guests, thank you. So lastly, I'd like to invite you all to join us at the reception just across the lobby where there will will be refreshments. So please, thank you, and we'll see you there.